Time management is a myth. It's about emotional management, really. And what's the best way to regulate kids' emotions? First, let's all agree that yelling doesn't save time or make anyone feel better, especially ourselves. Hi, and welcome back to the Ask Mom Parenting podcast, because parenting is everything. I'm Sue, and with me is Randy, and this is your no bullshit, no filter, zero guilt parenting reboot. Whether you're deep in the toddler tantrums, navigating tween teen drama, or somewhere in between, you'll get clarity and actionable tools one episode at a time. So today we're tackling a popular topic in episode 5 titled Back to School Without Losing Your Shit, Routines, Resistance, and Real Connection. And we're covering all the angst tied to this time of year. I'm bringing my experienced and unconventional perspective to this subject. We're going to go beyond surface fixes and into emotional roots, power dynamics, and connection-first strategies. We want to actually end the meltdowns and chaos for good by creating sustainable systems year after year. And here's my first tip. The real solutions are actually in a more nuanced style of parenting. So hang out until the end, because I'm also answering some parent questions from my newsletter list. And yes, we'll be giving you the no BS answers there too. The back to school pattern that I see year after year is that parents think back to school stress is about getting the morning routine right. And yes, that's true. We want to get the morning routine smooth. They think that it's about getting the child in line and out the door on time. But in reality, it's about doing prep on our part and setting systems in place for us to be more of a managerial role rather than being sucked into the drama. The routine is only scratching the surface of addressing the chaos. Beneath it, there's a perfect storm of kids adjusting to a new environment, new expectations, and all the social dynamics that the new year brings, not to mention hormone changes for when that age starts. Parents are also unknowingly carrying their kids' emotions in addition to our own, and these factors lead to mornings that run on reaction instead of proactive planning and leadership. By the end of this episode, you'll be able to spot the real reasons that mornings feel like a fight and then fix them at the root. Use connection-first strategies that make kids more cooperative so that you don't have to yell. And implement a repeatable action plan year after year for smoother mornings, even when things go sideways. So let's get into it. Why does back to school seem to break so many of us? Why is the time surrounded by back to school so full of heightened emotion? It's not just school supplies and sharper pencils, it's power struggles, pressure, parental guilt. There's a lot of demands on parents to volunteer, to bake cookies, to facilitate homework, to drive to practice and make meals every single night. And I think we also take on some of the uncertainty that our kids are feeling. And that's all enough for me to tell anybody to just lose my number. Randy, how do you feel when you take your kids to school? Like after the summer off and the first day of school, what are you feeling?
I'm actually feeling quite excited. I love back to school time. So where I live, back to school is early September. So it's just a nice, beautiful time of year. We're kind of heading into fall. But I also think that that comes with just a lot of years of just kind of prepping for that. I do think that I have some solid routines in place and systems in place. I loved how you mentioned systems because that's everything. I think that's so important. So yeah, when back to school comes, I think everyone's just ready. And the thing is, I also think my kids are ready too. I know people always talk about the kids kind of getting squirrely at the end of the summer. And even if they're going to summer camp and things like that, there's just something about that school routine. Even if you're homeschooling, it's still a different routine, and people and kids love that, I think, and I think parents love it too. But for me, when you heard it said systems, it just was like a light bulb in my head, because that's where the magic sort of happened with me. I read a lot about having systems in place. So for example, my kids' backpacks are always in the same place. They don't ever move. If they need to take homework upstairs, they do. Then it's back down in their backpacks. If I'm going to get caught up in a morning struggle, it's with the lunches probably. If I'm usually my kids will pack their snacks and I'll probably make the sandwich. But when I can get into doing it the night before, it's beautiful. So that's another system in place. Anything you can do the night before, even having kind of, I have a loose laundry schedule that I do, but it took a long time of getting there. It really started when my kids were like young and in daycare. And I think that's another reason why it was just been a little easy for the back to school transition, because the kids were always in daycare or preschool and they always had somewhere to be at a certain time. And now we just have like a solid routine, but the systems being in place is huge. And it's for school and for like your household too. Like knowing where things are supposed to be. If my kids come home with a permission slip, I sign it right there. I have a system of when my kids actually come home with a folder. They each have a folder, and all their like stuff that they keep home is on one side, on what they have to bring back to school is on another. And like I don't look in that folder until I know I'm ready to take care of whatever's in the folder. So all systems like that, and a lot of it's like household type stuff too. It took years to curate, but it really makes all the difference.
Right. We're going to talk about systems. We're going to talk about a lot of different ideas that will help us sustain this for, year after year so that we don't find ourselves into the chaos and the drama year after year. We want this to be over for parents. We want them to have the confidence to know that their home is set up and ready to go for back to school so that it becomes less of an emotional overwhelm for moms and dads. And parents tell me that back to school stress is about getting the morning routine right, but actually it's so much deeper. It's about learning to lead our kids in a time of transition. It's also about addressing any underlying emotional root causes that are really behind the meltdowns and chaos. So the system is one thing, but we also have all of the emotional tug that we're dealing with every morning. And I think that's the part that drains us the most. And what do you think the real reason we yell in the morning is? It's not necessarily a kid behavior issue. It's more of a leadership gap. Kids are the chaos. They're full of uncertainty, stress, insecurity. Each year starts over and they face a new year. And we already know to expect this. We already know that the kids' emotions are going to be heightened at the beginning of the year. Even though they're excited to go back and kind of get a new structure, they're also super nervous. And we do pick up on that. So since we already know to expect all of the heightened emotions, if we keep allowing ourselves to get sucked into the inevitable vortex of expected turmoil, then are we really in charge? So we're the ones with the wisdom, and we're the steady creators and overseers of the system that we're going to learn how to create. Your child isn't always resisting you in the morning when they're melting down. They're resisting sometimes any lack of routine or unpredictability. Or they're distracted by the stress of their upcoming day, and we take the hits because we are their safe space. So we can reframe our yelling as a symptom of being in reactive parenting mode. To prevent that reaction, we want to carve the time for prep time at night and lay out clothes, check homework, backpacks. And this tiny effort will go so far as to get rid of some of those issues that are likely to pop up in the morning, like you said, Randy. Kids create the checklist, and that sets them up for success. Each school year changes. Each year, the child is responsible for deciding what goes on that checklist. Sometimes at the first week or two, it's going to take them a little while to understand what's expected of them and how their checklist list should look. But the child will make each their own checklist on what is needed to do for prep for this year. Once the system is in place, we just keep this whole structure going year after year. Everyone learns to manage their own deadlines, their own details, while you just oversee the main event by setting the expectation. Setting that expectation that at night, at whatever time, after dinner, after homework, whenever it is, you guys decide when are we doing our prep time. And then you just have to oversee, is the checklist done? And has everything been completed? You don't need to create the checklist. You don't need to do any of that. You just get to stand back and ask, did your checklist get done? Leadership parenting says that we have a problem and here's how we're going to fix it. Or in this case, prevent any problems with our prep time. So that's several less items that we're going to have to deal with in the morning if we take care of it at night. The reframe here is grab control of the chaos before it grabs control of you. Prep time at night is one way to do that. And having your kids do their own checklist is the next way. Randy, what kind of routines, do you have any specific routines at night that you guys do for your prep time?
Yeah, I would say so. First of all, though, I do want to say I love the checklist idea or any sort of like little bit of a reminder for that, or even a routine. I started doing that with my daughter. She's my oldest. When she was 4 years old, going into preschool, I even found online like a visual. Even if kids can't read yet, there's a like a visual schedule, or you could do, and so that they know to like get their backpack ready and things like that. For bedtime specifically, we have a very sort of strict and protective routine around that because for years my kids did not sleep well. Like my daughter was waking up like every 30 minutes around the clock and as a newborn. And so when we finally, it took literal years to like get to that point. So we're very protective of bedtime. So what that comes with is anyone like backpacks are kept, at the same spot. So if you have anything like homework that needs to go in there the night before, we kind of do that. But then as far as like a solid routine goes, it's like kind of after dinner, things start rolling. That's when there's kind of no screen time after that to try to reduce any bedtime agitation from, being on a screen and the blue light behind that. And then it's like showers and things like that. And, doing something quiet and reading and things like that. But that is like super protective. Like after dinner, nothing else really happens except for getting ready for bed. And that really allows like a 1 to 2 hour time period for winding down. My son really needs that. He's 7. My daughter's about to turn 11. So we're playing around with a little, increasing the bedtime, and maybe you can, watch one show. So we are kind of loosening that with her and testing out and seeing, as long as it doesn't affect her sleep, we can start to maybe stretch that a little bit. And so far so good. So that's how we do the nighttime routine.
Oh, good. Well, that sounds like you're pretty structured and you found a way to make it work for your family, but structure is the overriding key there. This is the plot twist, is that morning meltdowns, which is what a lot of my moms that I work with say are their biggest stress. Morning meltdowns are not really the problem. They're only the red flag. So meltdowns signal a lack of coping skills for this particular moment. Now, here's some of the stuff that we can do. First, help your kids do more for themselves. Become attuned to early warning signs before they blow up or crying start. So like if you're seeing that your child's shoulders are hunched, or they're extra quiet or extra chatty, or they're irritable, they don't want to eat, or maybe they're using always or never language, or noticing something's going on, be on the lookout for that sign. Don't allow the moment to unfold to where you miss the signs and now the meltdown has happened, right? There's an opportunity for us to sort of just stand back and watch and listen to the kids and then sort of interrupt that pattern and that coping skill. We kind of get to the root of what's going on with that child when we see that behavior, rather than waiting for them to start crying, screaming, and interrupting the morning. So if we notice the signs ahead of time, I think that's helpful. Then we can also use what I have as a detachment tool, which is where we step back and we witness without owning. That's just a way of being, again, more in that managerial, like leadership role. Just because our child is having a meltdown, we don't have to absorb that emotion or that outburst. We can stay somewhat detached with our own boundary. And why? Because we expected this, so we don't have to react. Again, we're getting back to that big picture idea that mornings are stressful. We know our kids are going to have a whole set of new emotions and we are expecting the behavior. It's like if you have a friend that's always late and you build in that time, like she's always 10 minutes late, no matter where you go. So now you're like, okay, this isn't personal. I'm just going to build in the 10 minutes. I'm going to leave a little bit later because I know she's not going to show up on time. Like, whatever. We can predict that our kids are going to have these emotional moments. So that doesn't mean I have to answer each of them. And it doesn't mean that I have to allow the whole morning to go sideways because of that reaction and because of that emotional outburst. So when we step back and give the child grace and space, they can create their own coping strategies. We're here to support and teach them until they're able to get that skill down, but we don't have to step in and we don't have to solve it. We can create a pre-meltdown prevention strategy that's agreed to the night before. So if something that's a recurring issue, you've got one child who's really having a difficult time, but yet we have to keep the machine moving because we've got, say, It's three other kids. We got to get out the door. I can't stop the machine for one child, but I can support them. And how do I do that? Create a pre-meltdown prevention strategy that we're all going to agree at night. So if we find that for 2 weeks in a row, one of the kids is just really having a tough time, they're getting up late, or they're just afraid to go to school, whatever the issue is, at night we all sit down, we talk, we have a pre-prevention strategy or like a pre-meltdown strategy. You can come up with some ideas like, okay, when this particular child is crying or they're just not wanting to make their food or they don't want to eat or it's creating a problem for the rest of us, what we can do is agree that a silent physical touch from mom, maybe a gentle shoulder squeeze, is just able to recenter that child when they're having a tough time. Or I found that in our family, humor, it was usually helpful. You could agree ahead of time that whoever is having a meltdown that morning is going to stand in front of the fridge for 30 seconds to prevent further melting down. So we can have some fun with it. And it doesn't have to be personal. We don't have to highlight that one child. We can just say, hey, the machine is moving and we're getting all getting out the door on time, but we understand that you're having a tough time and we're here to support you, but we also can't allow the group to be held back. Where else do I need to intervene? Where else can I talk about it the night before to prevent the morning meltdown? So, time management is a myth. It's about emotional management, really. And what's the best way to regulate kids' emotions? First, let's all agree that yelling doesn't save time or make anyone feel better, especially ourselves. I know that when I was yelling in the morning, I wasn't leading or providing an example for how to handle stress. I just know that I felt kind of bad when I dropped the kids off. My throat hurt, and they probably forgot about it soon after, homeroom. But I was feeling bad about it for the rest of the morning. Second, we can create a reliable routine. Predictability and routine is calming to kids by keeping them steady, which leaves less room for chaos to take over. Components of the routine can include the same wake up time, even on weekends. I know that sounds crazy, but like within a 30 to 45-minute radius of wake up time, especially for younger ones, we get up pretty much at the same time. The only exception to that is teens because they need sleep on the weekends. So a consistent wake up time will anchor the nervous system. That's super important for getting to school feeling ready. You can have a built-in connection time. So like right after waking up, you can create a little routine. And what I did was I would sit on the edge of their bed when I'd wake them up. And I'd rub their back, but I would gently push down. I'd start at the head and I'd just like push them down into the mattress and go all the way up and down. And they would make their moaning and it would be funny. And they'd be like, Mom, and it was just a couple, 30 seconds for the four kids. And when they got older, the expectation was to set your own alarm and get yourself up. But just have like a little routine, a little connection routine in the morning. It's such a familiar feeling. It's such a comfort for the kids to know mom's coming up, a little bit of touch, a little bit of silly. And just doing that every morning is just really an important, connection tool. And then also maybe have a rule about no talking about school tasks or rules for either the first 15 minutes or maybe all morning, or, just give them the time to let their brain wake up. Never wake up and then start hitting them right away with all the expectations and things that they need to get done. I've made that mistake many, many times. My kids still tease me about how I would come upstairs yelling. That doesn't work, by the way, note to self. So parenting the feelings under the surface. So the chaos that we're having in the morning and the meltdowns, we're always looking for what's going on behind it. It's not what, it's why. These are the nuanced strategies that I talked about in the beginning. So first you can start to address your own back to school emotions. We often mirror the anxiety or the guilt that the kids are feeling. We're moms, we're nurturing, we're empathetic. Sometimes we're taking that on, and therefore we're more easily getting sucked into that drama in the morning and all the chaos and the emotion, the heightened emotion. So if we're expecting behavior to go sideways or we're planning ahead, we get less likely to get sucked in. So just remember, are you taking that on? And if so, it's not your deal. I know that sounds harsh, but it's theirs to figure out, and you've already been to school. So we don't need to take any of that on. And that is how the kids will develop their own coping skills and create their own decisions. And when we're in more of a support role, It means that we step in when needed, not all the time to solve each emotion. Another nuanced parenting strategy to get through the mornings is to help your child be able to learn how to decode their own sadness, their resistance about maybe why they don't want to go to school or see a certain friend or any hesitation that they have. You can teach them how to zoom out of any micro moment. I have a whole protocol that I teach about decision making, which we'll get to in another podcast. But one of the tricks to that is teaching the kids to zoom out of that micro moment, whether it's thinking about something else that they get excited about, thinking about what do they have control over, never feeling like that something that somebody says to them makes them feel like a victim. Whatever the situation is, we can help our child sort of get in touch with their own feelings and decode their own reasons for sadness and resistance by maybe just a gentle probing, asking a few simple questions, helping them zoom out of that micro moment that's got them all, full of anxiety at that particular time, and then help them get past that so that the morning can get back on track. And instead of saying things like a blanket statement like, you'll be fine, try to isolate the specific feeling. Try something like, new experiences always feel strange at first. I can't wait to hear how you navigate it today. Now I'm putting that back onto them to solve. And I'm saying, I can't wait to hear. So I want to be connected. I want to hear what's going on. I want you to share with me, but I can't wait for you to share with me how you chose to handle it. And most important, remember that as the parent, you are in charge. You don't need to do everything. Ask the kids if their activities are overwhelming to balance and dial it back. Have them pick club sports versus school sports. We had a child who was in track and he kept getting pressured to do the year-round track. And just first of all, that's a whole other podcast subject, but it was just asking him, how do you feel? And also getting him in touch with the fact that this could create injuries and then you're going to hurt your spring season. Do you really want to be running all winter? And, these are the types of things that we are looking at nuanced parenting. We're in charge and we're providing that, those leadership questions and those leadership prompts and thoughts for the child to think about. And that's where I talk about this is more under the surface. It's not just about the meltdown, it's the root causes. So if he's seeing like, I don't want to go to track practice today. Okay, well, let's get to the bottom of why. Is it a coaching issue? Is it, are you feeling like you're not being very good? Should we look at extra help? Like what is going on below the hunched shoulders, the sadness, or whatever, helping him decode how he's feeling? What's going on beneath that? So wrapping this up, here is a repeatable action plan that I think will really be beneficial for moms in the morning to keep things on track, to keep things moving, addressing the emotional outbursts that we now know we don't have to react to because we know they're coming. We already know. Let's just admit, we all know that there's going to be meltdown. So why are we acting like we're surprised? And why are we acting like we have to come up with some fancy tool? We don't. We can help them solve it for themselves. But the repeatable action plan that you can build out each year and change it for the school year, create the night before prep time to prevent reactive yelling in the morning. Kids are in charge of their own checklist. You're in charge of making sure that the action plan takes place every night. So you just have to follow up. Did you go through your checklist? Oh, and guess what? If they tell you they went through the checklist and they didn't, and now they're rushing in the morning and they forget their lunch or they forget something, that's not for me to solve, right? This is logical consequence. This is how life is out in society. This is how real life is. By me supplementing these decisions for them just cripples them, just prevents the coping mechanisms. Yes, it hurts. Life does hurt, but then it probably won't happen again. Next time I ask you if your checklist was done and you missed your homework and you had a 0, your checklist will get done. So I don't need to micromanage the checklist. I don't need to micromanage all of the things that they're doing, but I will prompt you every night. Did you get your checklist done? That they created. Learn how to spot pre-meltdown signs so that you can interrupt them. Know your child's red flags and have a sign for redirection. The sign could be the gentle shoulder touch, the agreed time of standing in front of the fridge to stop the meltdown, whatever it is you guys decide works. At night, we're gonna have those already set up so that when someone starts going off the rails in the morning, we can say, here's what we decided. Drill down on your routine to stabilize emotions and crowd out chaos. Remember that routine is the fence that keeps chaos out. So routine and structure is everything. And that is how kids leave the day feeling confident, is knowing that they knew what to expect in the morning. It's not haphazard, it's not chaotic. They knew what to expect. And keep your own back to school emotions in check. Intentionally detach and give space to your kids to develop their own coping skills and solve their own problems.
All right. I like that. I love the detachment that you're talking about because I think that's something that a lot of people kind of push back on, but it works. That's what I want to say. If you're pushing back on it, give it a try because sometimes it really can help you get to like a neutral ground because it's so easy to get caught up in emotions. And I know it like sounds weird, but I've actually tried that and when sometimes you need that.
I love the word
Yeah.
neutral. You are so right. Like, yes, it neutralizes the moment. Oh my God, that right there, that's gold. I love saying that being able to be detached intentionally and understand, I mean, that whole prediction method is so money because it's when I predict that the kid's melting down, and I'm not like surprised by it. I'm not overreacting to it because like, oh, yep, knew this was coming. But wow, I love that connecting detachment to neutral. I love the word neutral and I use that a lot in my coaching. Neutral language, neutral reactions, and I love that. Yes, you are correct. It neutralizes the moment. I love that. So should we get to some of the questions? We had a bunch of questions from the list, and I would love to get to answering those.
Yeah, I'm so excited for these questions. The first question is, how do I create consistent after school routines without burnout?
So the real issue here isn't just the routine, it's trying to parent on empty. Burnout is so real and so prevalent and insidious. Again, doing the whole parenting in advance, which is what I do teach, and the whole prep and the preemptive and proactive, all of that is going to help with burnout. But in the case of answering this question, so consistency doesn't have to be a rigid structure. It's about predictable rhythm with flexibility being built in. Burnout happens when you try to manage everything for your kids and instead of with them and teaching them how to manage on their own. It does take a few extra minutes to teach them how to do things so that I'm not taking it on. It does take a little bit more of a proactive approach, but when you bake in that proactive thinking and that prep, the burnout will sort of kind of go away because we are turning things back over to the kids at every age. It doesn't matter how old they are capable of doing something for themselves. So usually when I'm working with a mom, I would say, I would ask questions as to what are the expectations you have of yourself and of those expectations that you've got on your list, how many can you turn over to your kids? And then we take some time for training. We would work up a plan that the night before or prior to the actual morning when it's game time. How do we turn over some of those things that we think we're doing? And I've mentioned this in previous podcasts. And one of the most important things for me, again, was teaching my kids at 5 to do their own laundry and to pack their own lunches. You know, 4 kids, a full-time business, I just didn't have it in me to be doing all of that. And it was amazing what the kids were capable of doing. So what I challenge parents to do is look at your morning, look at your life, really write it down. What is burning you out? Isolate it, write it down, and then zoom out and say, where can I turn this over to the child? What can I get off my plate? And what do I not need to be involved with? We already have so much going on. We have so many expectations, society, school, you know, like I said, we've got a volunteer at school. We've got all these things we're doing, but there's a lot of stuff that we don't have to be doing that our kids could be doing. So another way to help solve burnout is to start with one anchor activity. So before adding homework or chores, you know, just choose one after school ritual that grounds everybody. A snack plus 5-minute reconnect chat on the couch, or, you know, that counts. Anchor equals calm. And each year, at different ages of each child, that anchoring is going to take on a different idea. But if you have the system in place that we're going to do an anchoring activity after school just to let kids kind of come down from the day, no expectations, no requirements, no hit the ground running, grab your snack and get your homework done. Like where can our kids sort of decompress? I think it's important that burnout for us is having the kids come home and then go from thing to thing to thing. How do we slow that down? And how do we give our kids some type of anchoring and calming time for them to just be in charge of their time? Also, let kids lead and be part of the routine. Give them ownership over the order or timing of things within the framework. So, like, for example, homework, play, shower, what order works for you? You're still the leader, but you're not the cruise director. So, tell the kids, here's the expectations. We have to get homework, we have to get sports, we have to get whatever it is that you need done. Like I said, each year and each age of the children takes on a different expectation, a different role, a different activity. But the structure is what you're in charge of. And that schedule, that planning, have the kids be choosing what they want to do and when. Do they want to take their shower right after they get home from school? So what? Okay, great. Take your shower. Let them be part of it. It's all I care about is that it gets done. These are the things that need to get done. I don't have any concern over the order or how you choose to do it. So I think that's important because once I let go of that control, it's less burnout on me. So build in rest like it's sacred. I'm a giant believer of sleep. So burnout for mom and dad, as well as the child, burnout is real. It's real for everybody in the family. And rest needs to be protected, like you were saying earlier, that nighttime routine and that protected activity, which sleep is the most important. Not everything, every minute of the day has to be productive. One day a week, you can do nothing. You have a do nothing day. That's not lazy. It's just preventative parenting. If you're feeling burnout, you could assume that your kids are as well. How can you dial back expectations, share the load with them as partners, and get more free time in the process? So I would say my overall answer to the burnout is, my kids don't need me to orchestrate perfection or succumbing to everyone's outside expectations. What they need me to do is to model balance. So we'll set those demands as a family. Balance means what's too much? Let's sit down and talk about it. I don't need to be the one that determines everything. I just need to be, the one setting the tone for let's have this conversation and how do you choose to handle it? Burnout can be shared. It doesn't have to be something I take on all by myself. I'm not alone in the family. We've got the kids and I think that that's an important distinction.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Our next question is, how do I keep my kids consistent with sleep, play, homework, and extracurriculars without them getting overtired?
Yeah, this is a little bit somewhat of the same, but this question kind of speaks to what's underneath every Pinterest perfect printable routine, which is like this just screams parental burnout, overwhelmed kids, and the myth that balance means doing everything well. But balance means getting rid of some shit and picking only 1 to 2 priorities, and the rest just get demoted. We just don't care. We're only going to have a couple priorities, and you know what? I don't need to pick those priorities. We can have that as a family meeting. We can talk to the kids about what their priorities are. I just need to be in a managerial standpoint, making sure that it all gets done. Your child is probably tired because their schedule could be overstuffed with things that the adults said were important. Not just mom, but teachers, society, coaches, friends. Kids are navigating so much that they don't have the skills to manage right now. I remember telling my kids, especially when they got to be adolescents, pre-adolescents, and just teenagers, the pressure became so much. And I remember just telling them, guys, being a teenager is hard. I don't envy you. Like, I didn't have this much stress when I was a teenager. And sometimes just acknowledging it and telling them that it's different these days and that I see that and I understand it and I'm here to support you through that. Wow, I could just see some of the like tense face muscles sort of, relax because just showing the kids that I understood and telling them that I understood and then having a conversation like, how do we pull this back? Even with sports, our daughter chose to do a club volleyball, but she also played volleyball in school. And wow, club, no way. It's too much. The pressure that they're putting on and the financial drain. And at the end of the day, they didn't really want to be athletes in college. They just wanted to go have fun. And you have to, again, zooming out, what's really important? And is this about me or is this about her? So it's important to think about all of those factors and incorporate all of them into your decisions that you have with, the conversations that you have with your kids. I think overall, what I would teach is that sleep is non-negotiable. That was something we just were not going to budge on. Everything else flexes to sleep. With rest, everything is possible. I guarded bedtime for all it's worth. If an extracurricular activity pushes bedtime later than the child can handle, that activity isn't worth the cranky mornings and the behavior blowback that we're going to get. Rotate the focus. Don't stack it all at once. So you can do a rotating schedule. Some weeks the focus is play. Other weeks it's school. Teach your kids that not everything gets 100% every day. It's not failure. It's a reality. And that's what we do as adults to pace ourselves. It's what balance really looks like in real life. And they kind of look for that crash window. Most kids need a deep compression gap right after school before they can do anything else. And that's not them being unmotivated. That's their nervous system catching up from a stressful day. Most important and overlooked is to check in with your child on the pace, their level of interest, and how they envision what balance looks like for them. Always ask the kids, get their input, get their feelings, and incorporate that into the overall decision. And the parenting reframe for this one would be, the more I protect the rest and the routine, the more I protect their ability to learn, grow, and to actually care. So parents have a hard time with getting kids to care. You can't care if you're exhausted.
Yeah, great point. Exactly. Another question, what strategies work for reducing homework battles?
Well, first of all, I hate homework. So I commiserated with the kids about homework.
Yeah, I'm kind of lucky in a sense of like my kids are both in elementary school right now, and the elementary school doesn't emphasize homework, although there is a small amount. And I do think that is from a lot of parents not really wanting it, especially at the younger age. I think as they go up, they're going to definitely have more expectations. But I think kind of what you said in the first or in the last question is everything. It's that period of rest first.
Mm-hmm.
I know when my kids come home from school, they just rest, and some food is definitely what they need to kind of recharge. They just kind of come home exhausted, and then usually the homework can get done.
Okay, this was something that I did with the kids when they were in college too. It depends on your home and how you want to execute this, but one of the things that I would have the kids do is teach me. So I would either have a whiteboard or a chalkboard, or maybe have that set up somewhere in the playroom, wherever. And whenever I was getting a battle, like if homework was just really, really hard, or they just weren't able to understand what was being asked, we would have a little bit of fun, and I would have them teach the lesson to me. And that actually really worked. I mean, mostly worked when the kids got older and when they were really stuck on something. And I understand that this particular question is probably more about, how do I handle the battles? The kids don't want to do it. But it is an idea that why, again, getting to the root of it, why do you not want to do it? Do you not understand it? Is it too much? Did you already do this at school and you feel like this is busy work? Like, I would ask the child what's really going on, or are we just feeling like unmotivated? Get to the root of it. But one of the things that, like I said, was hopeful, and even when the kids were in college, one of my kids was in engineering and he was just cross-eyed trying to figure out some of this stuff. And I said, just go set it up in your room and talk out loud and reteach it as if you're teaching it to somebody else, or tutor it to somebody that's in a year below you, or whatever it is. Try to find a way to explain what you do know out loud. And that was a very important tactic for the kids.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. How can I help my child navigate friendship struggles?
I wish I knew what age the child was, because I have a variety of answers for that question. If I knew the age and if I knew what kind of struggle was going on. Ultimately, since I don't have the specific information, what I can tell you is my overarching answer to that is to reinforce the relationship with the siblings. Friends come and go. And I really stress to the kids that in high school, especially, you think your friends are everything, and they are everything at that time. But even when they're younger, even for elementary school, friends do come and go. I always made sure I told the kids that, but what never goes is your family and your siblings. And I don't know if it's step siblings, if it's whatever, anywhere that you have that safety and that relationship built in, with siblings is everything. And I know, kids do fight, whatever, but those shared emotions, those shared memories, if they have a phone and they have videos and they're creating memories with their siblings, my kids to this day are sending memories to each other, and they're still remembering funny, stupid things that they did together. I was always circling back and reinforcing the relationship of the family and the home and really minimizing the importance of the friendships from school, because you are going to get your heart broken. You are going to be, left out. And I would tell the kids this up front. Whatever friendship struggle is going on right now, yep, this is going to happen. This is not the last time this is going to happen. I'm very practical, matter of fact, injecting wisdom into what the kids are learning, and what they're experiencing from my adult perspective. Yep. People are going to let you down. They're still letting me down, even at my age, even the business people, anyone I think is a friend, sometimes the friendship struggle is more about the child. We don't know what's going on at the child's home. If there's bullying going on, I always have the kids go, let's look at what might be going on in their home. But so friendship struggles without, more specific data to answer this question, I would say that my biggest answer is just reinforcing that family dynamic and always circling back to the importance of the people that don't let you down.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I also think while you were saying that, I thought about like role playing coming up as well, maybe like role playing with a child on how to navigate, because it's hard with, for example, like we don't know if the child. It might be that the child is having a hard time with new friendships this school year or conflict in friendships. So I think role playing in general, and I think that's important as well because I'm reading and hearing and seeing a lot of people like social psychologists and people are writing books on just the lack of social interaction like kids are having because they're so focused on screens and we're in this like screen based play. So I think yeah, because when you were saying that with the siblings, it kind of like my first thought was, yeah, because they're doing that with kids in their home. But also, I think especially if they're having a struggle, like managing conflict or getting friends, I guess it depends. Like you said, it depends on the age, but role playing a little bit. Because I know for me, I actually remember back to being like in kindergarten, and I was like terrified. Like I went to like a preschool for a little bit. Otherwise, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I was like completely terrified. And my mom like role played or told me what to say.
Awesome. Yeah, that works well.
Yeah. I remember walking up to one kid and just verbatim saying, "Hi, my name is Randy. What's your name?"
Oh, like a robot.
And my mom just said say it to one person.
Yeah.
And I did. Like,
great idea. Absolutely. Yes. That's a great way to navigate friend concerns and friend issues, is to role play what the mom or whatever, advice we can give them. That's great.
Yeah, and going back to about the bullying too, that's kind of something that it's been on my mind too, and I think it's at the forefront of asking if they're feeling like they are maybe getting bullied at school, or especially if they have social media. I would say definitely always keep that in the forefront of the mind and just ask and see, because I think sometimes kids won't say it, but maybe if they're asked, they might open up about it.
That's one other thing too, to add to that. If you do have siblings at home, the relationship you create with your first one, especially depending on the age gap, like in your case with the 11 and 9, like my oldest was my buddy, man. Like he really helped me understand some of the stuff that might have been going on with the triplets. He was 3-year age gap was great. I had trust. I built that relationship with him. And sometimes he could give me the insights like, yeah, hey, so-and-so was, getting bullied, or, he would hear the word on the street and then he would tell me, and then I was able to, affect some type of change, or I could probe and ask a question that was going to lead me down that path. And that's the key to parents. If you get a sibling to sell out another sibling out of love, we're not snitches. Okay. But if you get a child to tell you something, you protect that trust with your life. You never, ever, ever reveal that or reveal your sources. And that's just a little side note, little piece of parenting wisdom right there.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. So One more. It just says, how can I make the transition to back to school routines smoother for my kids? So I know we pretty much talked about morning routines. We talked about like kind of some afternoon routines and even touched on evenings. But I guess there's just a little bit maybe of the, I think other transitions are people kind of, they might be, doing earlier bedtimes or reducing screen time, or even other transitions like they got to eat a lot of junk food over the summer and we're reining that in. So just curious what your thoughts were on that.
So smoother, I live in the big picture, and that's why I love doing this podcast with you, because you are so into the details of the day, and I love that. But what hit me oddly with that question, and I don't know why, but I thought, school choice. Like, have we ever, do we sit down and talk to the kids about where they're going to school and where do they want to go to that school, and do they want to be homeschooled, or like whatever? Like, I don't know why I went there with that question. I know that that really doesn't have anything to do with making school mornings smoother, but again, I'm always getting to the root. I'm not just looking at the surface behavior. When I hear that question, my mind, as a mom of four, I go right to, why are my mornings not smooth? What can I do to prep the night before? My main answer too is, how do I get my kids to take on more? When your kid has skin in the game, they're taking ownership, and the morning is going to go more smoothly. I 90% of the time when I'm talking to parents, I'm seeing that they will have an intellectual conversation with me about, yes, I should, but the execution level just isn't there. Sometimes they're just not holding that boundary, or they're not creating that structure or that system. And so I come back to the system, I come back to the prep. However, there's some type of intuitiveness I'm getting from that question. I don't know why. That's making me say, how often are your mornings not smooth if you've put those things in place, if you're prepping at night and you're doing all the things that we talked about, and you're turning some more things over to your kids, and you're detaching with intention to let them hold that space for themselves, and they are also dealing with consequences of their inaction. You have to allow that, because the more you don't allow consequences to unfold with their inaction, the more you pick up the pieces for them, the more you're going to keep getting morning chaos. So there's that. But also, what kind of chaos are we talking about? Are we talking about, and I just don't want to go to school? I don't want, getting to the root. So as parents, if we're leading from a more big picture managerial standpoint, like I've said, we're going to see the below the surface, the root situation. We're going to probe that, and we're going to probe, do you even want to go to the school? Are there any other schools that, are there in our district? Do you want to be homeschooled? Like, is there what's really going on? With our kids, I always said everything was on the table. We talked about everything. Everything was open. We were honest, and everything was on the table. So I don't know why, but I was inspired to go there with that question.
Yeah. And I think just in general, another thing just to add is, and this is because this is what I do, if anything, we were given extra anything like extra screen time or extra, maybe the snacks got a little lax, or, just start reining that in a little bit earlier. I think, it's easy to want to flip the switch on like the night before school starts. Okay, we're back to the routine, but even a couple weeks kind of getting back a slower pace, getting back into whatever, because everybody's routine is going to be different. Whatever your back to school routine is, start reining that in like a couple weeks in advance.
That's a great point. But again, the antidote to that is getting the kids involved.
Absolutely, yeah.
The kids need to be asked their opinions, and then those opinions need to be respected. They need to help set the structure, the tone, the plan, whatever it is you're doing. They can pick the order. Here's the four things they need done before bed. X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D. All right. I don't care how you do it. I just care that it gets done. And then that translates to when they get to be teenagers and you need the lawn mowed. I don't go, you need to mow the lawn on Friday. I say, hey, I know that you've got plans this weekend. I know that those are important to you. I just need the lawn mowed this weekend. And then I let it go. And if by Sunday at 5 the lawn's not mowed, of course, we're getting out there and we're mowing the lawn, even if it's in the dark with a headlamp on. I'm in charge of making sure it gets done. But when you give these kids, the freedom within those boundaries, and you just set the tone and you get them involved, when they have that buy-in to what the structure is, what the rules are, and they helped create them, you have just cut by more than 50% pushback, chaos, meltdowns, because now you can come back and say, well, this was what you created. Like, this is what you thought was going to work. Does this not work for you anymore? How should we change it? How should we change it so it works? So
Yeah.
again, come back to all of the things that we talked about in this podcast and all of the actionable points that are going to help you get your mornings running smoother and having back to school time become, you know, I would never say a lot of fun, but less chaotic maybe. So this wraps up our episode 5 for back to school. If you would like to get personalized coaching and speak with me directly, you can go to askmomparenting.com and look for the coaching link, or sign up for the newsletter or email me. I have a copy of 20 conversation starters for after school that aren't how was your day. I would love to have put those up on my website, but my website's not cooperating. So in this particular case, please email me, Sue at askmomparenting.com, and I will send you the free 20 conversation starters for after school that aren't how was your day. Thank you so much for listening, and happy parenting.